In our lives, there's an individual struggle between individual freedom and communal life. There are two sides to our character. One is transient, restless, and solitary. The other is collective and communal. A search for family, friends, and a place for the heart to reside. These two sides rub against each other always and forever, in every day of our lives. The quest for individual freedom against communal life. Our guest speaker today, I think, handled those effortlessly in his time at the Academy and when he left the Academy. The Commons where we are today was built after the school first opened. A spiritual place, a high cathedral ceiling. We've had dinners, meals, concerts, graduation. It's a space filled with the best time of memories and ghosts. This is a structure that speaks to you, its natural beauty, the artistry of its construction. It's a perfect place to resonate the introduction of our guest speaker. It really is an honor for me to introduce our guest speaker. Why? Well, he's connected to the Academy in many ways. I first met him back in 2010. He was one of our first applicants for the residential program. I remember interviewing him as though it was yesterday. It was like talking to one of my peers, mature, thoughtful, deep voice, engaging smile. I could have been talking to Morgan Freeman. He talked about his passion for IT. He was designing spreadsheets for his father for the workplace. Let's not forget, at that time, most of us had a Nokia phone to hang around with and phone. In the first few weeks, he was not here. He was representing Uganda at the Youth Olympics. The kids wondered about this missing person. What would this new arrival be like? Well, after only a year here, he became president of our student council. I think that says an awful lot about him. I can't remember another occasion where somebody has done that. After leaving the Academy, he got a scholarship at Grinnell University. He went on to do great things there, again, still working with IT. He developed some apps with his friends. One of them was a voice disintegration package. It was a bit like Mission Impossible, you know, where Tom Cruise gets the message and then it self-destructs. That's what it would do on your mobile phone. He doesn't do things in halves. When he left Grinnell University, he decided to go straight to the top of Facebook, to the person to apply there. And he got a job with Facebook. He worked with Facebook. He's now CEO of his own company, a company called Chippercash, which is a bit like M-Pesa across the borders. This person has also been a massive ambassador for the Academy. He's done many speeches at AKAM Foundation events. He's great at giving back to his community, as His Highness wishes for every one of you. It gives me great pleasure to introduce our guest speaker today, alumni, CEO, and a great person, Serunjogi.
Good morning, everyone. Head of Academy, Mrs. Alison Hampshire. Senior School Principal, Mr. Francis Serunjogi. Distinguished guests, parents, and of course, most importantly, to the graduating class of 2021. Congratulations, and I thank you for allowing me to be a part of the conclusion of this important chapter of your lives and the commencement of this next chapter of your lives. I must admit, when Mr. Serunjogi reached out to me asking me to be this year's keynote speaker, I was in complete disbelief. I actually reached out to a friend of mine, a dear friend of mine, Farah, and I told her that Mr. Serunjogi just asked me to give the keynote address to this year's graduating class, but I actually feel like he's playing a practical joke on me. So, just out of precaution, I'm not going to tell anyone until I know it's for real. And of course, it was for real. And I only say this to say that I am deeply moved and very honored that I was asked and given this incredible privilege to be with you today. You know, part of this whole process of getting ready for this speech has been quite nerve-wracking, for lack of a better word. There are a few things that I've had to do these last couple of months and weeks that have had me feeling as nervous as getting ready for this speech. And I guess, at its core, it's been this question I've asked myself, why me? I've actually, as you know, because of COVID, had to pre-record this and send it ahead. And I was asked to make sure that I get it in by Wednesday of this week. And, because of how things go usually and because of, me being a procrastinator, plus with the incredible nerves I've had this week, I end up getting it to the team at the Academy just a few hours ago by the time you see this. So I want to start by saying sincere apologies to Mr. Karaoke for being late on the delivery of this. As you and I know, this isn't the first time I've been late to deliver an assignment that you've given me. But what I can say is that I've never fallen asleep in your class, unlike a good friend of ours that we all know named Hey Selena, who was a favorite of Mr. Karaoke's, which probably explains why he got to get away with falling asleep in our econ classes. But anyway, enough of that. You guys have worked far too hard, and you've waited too long for this day to listen to my lame and useless banter. I thought I'd start and focus my remarks today on two key stories from my childhood. The first story is, I think, one that many of you can relate to. When I was very young, our parents asked us, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And the first response I gave two responses to this, but the first response I gave when I think I was maybe about 5 or 6 years old, was that I want to be a bus driver. And as you can imagine, my mother and my father weren't too thrilled about that response. But, to give you some context, the reason why I said that is because when I was younger, would go on holiday to Kenya. For those of you who don't know, I'm born and raised in Uganda. So we'd go to Kenya, Nairobi for holidays. And we'd take the bus. We'd drive over, took about 18, 20, maybe 24 hours sometimes. But it was the most exciting trip. You'd get to see parts of the country you didn't see before, great food, be around great people, just a lot of fun for a kid or for anyone. And so for me, in my very primitive thinking, I concluded that the person who has the most fun in the world is the guy who gets to do this every day. And no one more so than the guy who drives the bus, because this guy is driving literally every day. So I figured that's a profession that I want to pursue in life, and I can get to go to Nairobi as often as I want and have this fun all the time. Now, as I grew older, I changed my response. When my parents asked me again, I'd often say, I want to be a policeman. And again, it didn't evoke the type of reaction you expect would be a proud reaction from your parents. And to give you some context, part of why I said policeman was, as again, many of you can relate to this, Uganda has some of the worst traffic in the world. So every time going to school, going from school back home or to the swimming pool after school for practice, would have to endure this really agonizing traffic jams. And in those moments, the most powerful person in the world seemed to be the traffic policeman that would coordinate traffic and literally decide who would go and who would stay and how long people would stay. And so I figured if I was a policeman, I would make sure my parents would never, ever, ever have to wait in traffic. So why not do that? But obviously, as I grew older, I soon realized that our parents and the dreams they had for us, often pushed me to aim for more in that sense of the world, in terms of, day-to-day living, what you can earn, supporting your family, etc. But I raised this story for a key point. At the heart of that question, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I was listening to a friend of mine give a speech about this same point. But at the heart of that question is our society's collective ambition. It's the accumulation of our hopes and dreams as a society for our children and those who come after us. And so that's an important point. And I'll stop there for now on that story, but I'll come back to it in a moment. The second story from my childhood that I wanted to talk about today is about swimming. For those of you, many of you who don't know, I used to be a swimmer. I swam competitively from the time I was 7 years old all the way to college. And swimming really defined my childhood. It's pretty much all I did. I would practice every day. It's a thing that I did probably more than my academics. And as a child, that was quite grueling. The sacrifices that, obviously I had to make as part of that were really tough. And I remember asking my father, I said, how come I never go to birthday parties? Or at least as much as I want to. How come I never hang out on the weekends with my friends? How come I don't do these things that my other friends are doing? And my father would look at me and he would say, Ham, I agree that those are good things. Those are fun things. But they're also small things. And he'd call them small good things. And that term stuck with me. And obviously as a child, it didn't make much sense. I just wanted to go to birthday parties. But a seed was planted. Somewhere in my subconscious, something was brewing. And as I grew older, it sort of manifested into this question around purpose. What is our purpose? As many of you will encounter in a few weeks and months as you sort of go into the next stage of your lives, you often will be the exception in the room. You'll be the one or the two people who have come from so far to be in this incredible setting, whether it's at a university abroad or whatever else you choose to do. And that sort of begs the question of equality, right? In a more equal world, would I be the one giving this address? Would you be the ones in your seats? Right? We all are graduates of AKAM. We are the 0.5% of the top 1% of students in Africa, right? We are incredibly privileged to be in these positions. We go to one of the finest institutions in the world in one of the poorest countries in the world. That irony shouldn't be lost on us. And I think at its core, it should evoke a sense of purpose. It should evoke a question around what are we supposed to do with all these gifts, these immense responsibilities and privileges that we have that 10 or 100,000 other more deserving people do not have. I think we live in a very interesting time in our lives today. In many ways, we've made remarkable advancements, progress that just baffles anyone, who has observed human progress over time. We have technologies today that allow us to re-land rockets. We can communicate with anyone in the world in the blink of an eye, instantly, for free. We can travel to any corner of the world easily and cheaply. Advancements in medicine that have enabled us to live longer, to be more efficient, to be better people. But at the same time, we remain quite far behind in a number of key areas. And this time when I say we, I mean us locally here in Africa, right? I mentioned a few minutes ago about how privileged we are to be graduates of this fine institution, and how we are in that 0.5% of the top 1% of our societies. But think about it. We are graduates of one of the best institutions in the world that happens to be based in Mombasa. And 70% of all children in Africa are out of school. Child mortality rate in Africa is the highest in the world. Less than 10% of all Africans have access to electricity. These are big problems. Who's going to solve these problems? How do we solve these problems? The irony of our immense privilege in this world should not be lost to us. And for me, trying to reconcile this whole question around purpose, around what am I to do with this space that I occupy, that I strongly believe someone more deserving should be occupying, but I happen to be in this space. What am I to do with it? And those questions, those thoughts, for me, that's what manifested into studying Chipper. It was this idea that, I didn't come this far just to come this far. And I owe it to all those who could have been in this place and were more deserving of it to make something of me being here. I grew up watching my parents work for themselves their whole lives, or both self-employed. And I saw firsthand how difficult it was for my parents, my dad, trying to send money to his business partners in Kenya. And it took 2 weeks to arrive, not to mention it was incredibly expensive. And so for me, the realization that this is a massive problem, I know it intimately because I've seen it my whole life. But more importantly, this is an important problem that has to be solved, is what drove me to try and tackle it. It wasn't because I thought I'd be successful at it. And this is a key thing I've learned over time. We shouldn't do things, and I implore you, the basis for which you do things should not purely be based on if you think you'll be successful in them. It mostly should be based on, is this something that's important? And is this something that someone must do? Then let that person be you. Many of the problems we face today are massive, difficult problems. And we are the ones who have to solve them. I think thinking about our world and our place in this world with this view, I think will go a long way in establishing the progress that we need to achieve these next couple of years. There's no reason why in our lifetimes we can't solve these problems meaningfully. And there's no reason why of all the people in the world who should solve them, it shouldn't be you. You people today, sitting here today, graduating from this institution. You have the ingredients to do this. You've been trained to do this. Your society has invested in you to do this. One of the tenets that I learned at the academy was this notion of we are responsible for the collective growth of our society. We play a part in that. And I think one of the lacking elements today in the world, particularly around capitalism, is this notion of responsible capitalism. It's okay to do well, and you should all strive to do well. But I think it's even more powerful to do well when everyone around you does well too, and when the things that you do drive others to do well as well. And this is, I think, what's at the core of at least this question of purpose that I've often found myself asking. So, to conclude, I started this whole remark with two stories about my childhood. The first being about this question about what do you want to be when you grow up? And I want to come back to this question now. There's a tragic reality about this question that too many children in Africa face, which is, to them, it's not a choice. Unfortunately, for too many children, the world has already determined what they can and cannot be. And that's tragic. How many brilliant people are unable to realize their potential because society hasn't invested in them, because they don't have the tools to pursue their dreams? How much progress as a society have we lost? How many good people are on the sidelines and can't participate in our economies or our societies? And how much better can we be if we had a society that supported those people, invested in them, and that most importantly, created a space and an opportunity for them to actually realize their dreams? How much further could we go? And so I think it's within reach in our lifetimes for that question to be a legitimate question that every young African boy and girl can be asked, and they can meaningfully give an answer that truly reflects what they can be, not what a society that has severe limitations has determined that they should be. When I think of my time at the academy, I have very fond memories. I think of this place as being 2 years of my life where things just came together. 2 years of harmony. And I think of the people who made my time here special and who defined it. I think of my roommates, Martin and Alim, who I both love dearly. I think of my incredible and wonderful host parents, Mr. Bardai and Miss Sedwina, who are now practically family to me. I think of Mr. Francis Kariuki, my economics teacher, who is the very reason I chose to do economics in college. I think of the great Mr. Doody, who I love dearly, who, when I was very ill one weekend, sent his son to come to my dorm room and deliver porridge, which is a small act of kindness, but that goes a long way. I think of Mr. Gyoko, my physics teacher, who I had the greatest time with in our physics classes. And of course, Mr. Rafiq, my English teacher as well, and many others who I can't go into full detail and mention today, but who are all equally as important. I think of people who made sacrifices, who bent backwards continuously for me to be where I am today. And this notion of, I am because we are, and that we have a responsibility to pay it forward for the next generation, for the people who come after us, to be better than we ever could be. This is the reason why I've strived to give back as much as I can to the Academy. And on that note, I wanted to make a pledge to you today here that to the next class, not the class graduating today, not because I don't love you guys, but in the spirit of looking forward to the next year's graduating class, I will cover all of your SAT and college application fees for anyone who needs it. That won't be a barrier for schools that you're looking to apply to or that what you want to apply to. That's my pledge to you. And that's the least I could do. And I hope I can do more as we go forward. And I will do more as we go forward. But that's just a start. That's just a small way to pay it forward. And a small way to encourage others who I do think are significantly more talented and more brilliant than I am to be able to pursue the dreams and the goals that they've set out to pursue. We are the fortunate few for whom that question, what do you want to be when you grow up, is actually a valid question. Let's build a world where there's more people who can actually answer that question in a very meaningful way. So I want to conclude here today by saying, congratulations to you. You've worked very hard to get to where you are today. I know how hard you've worked. We've been there. It's not easy. This is no mean feat. Take the time to celebrate with your family, anyone who's supported you to get to this point. The next couple of years of your life will be some of the most meaningful. You'll have the most fun you've ever had in college. Make the most of it. And if there's any way I can be of any help to anyone, I always encourage people to reach out to me directly. I'm more than happy to offer my 2 cents, guidance, support, anything that helps another graduate of this great institution get ahead and make the world a better place. Thank you.